Again, thank you all so much for coming out. You know, it's kind of a short notice, Monday afternoon, but we really appreciate you coming out. It's an honor to have the senator to stop by, to be here with us today. So with no further ado, we want to make sure that he remains our senator. So I want to introduce you, our Senator Rand Paul.
Thank you. I feel like we're in church and we got the backbenchers back there. We're not going to pass the collection plate, all right? So you guys are safe. But I did bring you a check for $2.4 million. Now, I don't know if we can get it cashed here locally, but this is money I'm returning to you. We are given money each year to spend in our Senate office for employees and constituent services. We do a good job, but we also think, like a lot of government, there's too much money, so we try to save some of it. We've actually turned this back into the Treasury over the last 5 years, $2.4 million. I think that's the battle we all have in government, is that we need some government. We always need law enforcement, we need roads, we gotta have schools. There's certain things we need, but then there's some things that maybe we could do without in order to have enough money to provide what we need for everybody. We put out, we have a sheet that should be circulating that if you want to sign up, we will send you our waste report. We do this every week, and we put out something we think maybe government shouldn't be spending money on. So a couple weeks we found that your government's spending $2.5 million studying online dating to see if people make their choices based on physical appearance. And it's like, really? That's what your government's spending money on? Siri's talking to me, sorry. Yeah, Siri's like, you forgot that other part of your speech. But you know, it's amazing the stuff that your government's spending money on. $2.5 million studying online dating. $800,000 sent to Afghanistan to develop a televised cricket league for Afghanistan. $43 million sent to Afghanistan to develop a natural gas station. A couple $100,000 spent studying Japanese quail to see if they're more sexually promiscuous on cocaine. I think we'd probably say probably, you know, but the thing is why is your government spending money on stuff like this? And that kind of money could be either going to not adding to the debt or maybe to something that we need. And I think we have to decide as a country, are we so intent on fixing everybody else's problems around the world, or are we going to kind of say we've got problems here at home? You know, last week I stood up in the Senate and stopped, at least temporarily, the sale of 8 F-16 fighter jets to Pakistan. Why? Because they're asking us to pay for it. $350 million that we're having to spend on fighter jets for Pakistan. Well, we don't have the money to begin with. We've got to borrow it from China to send it to Pakistan. We also spent $250,000 last year bringing 24 Pakistani students to the United States to send them to space camp in Alabama. And it's like, really? Don't we have enough kids in Kentucky that can't go to space camp in Alabama that we're sending Pakistani kids to Alabama? We spent $15 million last year on free community college for foreign students. We do not have money to be doing this stuff. We have to decide, do we have enough money to fix the world, or we're going to try to fix the United States? But these are the problems we face. We borrow $1 million a minute. Our total debt, $19 trillion. And you ask yourself, well, how big is a trillion? I can't even imagine how big a trillion is. If you put $1,000 bills in your hand, 4 inches high, you'd have $1 million. But if you put $1,000 bills in your hand and you wanted $1 trillion, it'd be 63 miles high. Then you'd have 19 stacks of 63 miles high. That would be your debt. It's bigger than the entire U.S. economy. The entire U.S. economy is about 19 trillion. Now it's your debt. It's too big. It's a burden. It's like an anvil. It's like an anvil we're dragging around. It weighs down the economy. Some economists say it's costing us 1 million jobs a year. To my mind, it's as simple as this. If you guys want to be more successful here in Salyersville, leave more money here. Send less money to Washington. Have a smaller government in Washington and more money that remains locally to stimulate things. Imagine it this way. Let's say somebody here in town has a successful business and they've got 8 employees. Are they going to be more successful if we make them pay more taxes or less successful? You have to have a certain amount of government, but you don't want too much. I think we've got too much in Washington. So much and so much debt that your employer here that's got 8 or 10 employees can't hire another person or two. Add on top of that an administration that wants to eliminate one of our industries and has tried very hard to eliminate the coal industry. We heard it again just the other night with Hillary Clinton saying, we are going to put you out of business. Your coal miners out of business and your coal industry. We will put them out of business. It's like, well, they've darn near put all of them out of business and they're still trying. Your government, if we have to have regulations, should be about safety. The police and the sheriff's office patrol for crime, and your local policeman to make sure you don't speed. That's a reasonable regulation to prevent loss of life. But they don't say we're not going to have any cars, and that way we'll save lives by having no cars. That's what they're doing in the coal industry. There's going to be no coal industry because they think we're going to save the environment by having no coal industry. But we've lost 10,000 jobs. Just in the last week, we lost another 100 at CSX Railroad up near Ashland. We lost 150 CSX Railroad jobs down in Corbin. We have companies that came here because of cheap electricity. We have aluminum smelters over by Owensboro and Henderson. They came here because of cheap electricity. When the electric rates go up, we're going to lose those jobs also. So we've got real problems, and I think the main thing is we need people in government who come to your town and say, I want you to do better. How can I make your jobs do better? How can I make your community grow? To me, that you make your community grow by trying to leave more money in the community. That means government's got to get smaller in Washington so you can have more money left at home. Some of the things you've got to have taxes for your law enforcement, your teachers and things like that, but most of that's a local tax. That's not the federal tax. At the federal level, you've got to decide, we think that we can cure the world's problems. Can we be the policeman for Pakistan, Afghanistan, all these countries? There's a disconnect between our local communities and Washington. And I'll give you an example. I introduced an amendment in the Foreign Relations Committee that said that we shouldn't give any foreign aid to any country that persecutes Christians. Sounds pretty reasonable. I haven't met anybody in Kentucky who's for it. And yet when we had the vote, it was 18-2 against me to continue sending money to persecute countries that persecute Christians. How did I define it? Any country that has the death penalty for conversion to Christianity, or death penalty for criticizing the state religion, typically Islam, or death penalty for marrying a Christian. Do they ever enforce this? Yes. Pakistan has a young woman by the name of Asia Bibi. She's been on death row for 5 years. She went, you know what her crime was? She went in a small village to get water from the well, and the other women of the village began chanting, "Death, death to the Christian." They began stoning her and beating her, and she's crying out for help. When the police arrive, she thinks she's been saved. They arrest her and put her in prison because the women of the village said she was critical of the state religion. Just on Easter, I'm celebrating Easter in my church in Bowling Green. Easter in Lahore, Pakistan, 70 Christians blown up in a park. What kind of people kill innocent women and children in a park? It is completely insane, but we shouldn't be feeding these people and giving them money. We've got enough problems here at home without sending. We've sent $15 billion to Pakistan over the last 10 years. We sent $60 billion to Egypt. You know what they do with it? They steal it. Mubarak's family's worth 30 to 40 billion. Now they're in jail, but I mean, it's like everything gets stolen. They say 70% of foreign aid gets stolen. But really, it's not charity if you're borrowing it from China to send it to somebody else. We are a debtor nation, where we were once a great country that exported our goods, exported manufacturers. You know what our biggest export is now? Our debt. But it will come to an end. There will come a time at which nobody wants to buy our debt anymore, at which they say, no way. Before that comes, let's right the ship. Let's start acting and behaving like we once did. We are the richest, freest, most humanitarian country in the history of the world. We give away more money, not the government. You privately give to your churches more money than any other country in the history of mankind. In 2014, we gave nearly $400 billion away to our churches, Salvation Army, to different charities. That only happens in a society that has freedom. Doesn't happen in the Soviet Union, doesn't happen in Cuba, doesn't happen in Venezuela, because socialism doesn't work. Well, we've now got candidates running for office who are saying they're going to give you everything for free. Everything's going to be free. Nobody will have to work. It'll be a paradise on earth. And it's like, they're selling you a bill of goods. Socialism is a crummy economic system. It leads to poverty, but it also leads to violence. Because the only way socialism works is the government selects who gets to buy and sell things. Only the government decides, and if you defy the government, you go to a camp. It's what happened in the Soviet Union. 63 million people died under Stalin. And people say, oh no, we're just going to have democratic socialism like they have in Scandinavia. Well, do you want democratic slavery? You know, because a majority of people vote for slavery, would it be a good idea? We have to remember what did make our country great. What made our country great was the Constitution. It said our rights come from God, and that they pre-exist, and that the government's job is to protect those God-given rights. The government's job isn't to redistribute the wealth or create a socialist paradise. The government's job is to protect our freedoms, and we will thrive. Many people have fought for that freedom. I've got 3 nephews in the Navy right now. One of them flies the P-3 in the Navy. We've got a lot of brave young men and women that defend our country. They take an oath to the Constitution. That's the oath I take. I'm going to continue to do that to try to protect our freedoms and let us prosper again in this country. And I thank you all for coming out today. Thank you very much. And I'd be happy to take some questions, as long as they're easy questions. We'll start here and then we'll go back there.
Senator Paul, 2-part question, I guess, and it has to do with young people. It seems to me that candidates like Bernie Sanders and even Hillary Clinton would be getting zero support if our education system was actually educating young people about what you just put out, facts about the history of communism and socialism. It seems to me that these are empirical facts, not opinions, and they're factually wrong.
Yeah.
What can be done to, because it seems like he's getting so many votes because a lot of college kids just simply don't know the factual.
I think it's part of the problem. It is sort of a glib notion that sort of socialism can be sexy. You know, it's cool to be socialist because it's democratic and democracy's cool. But I always ask, when the kids come to Washington, I see a lot of 8th grade kids, 7th grade kids, they come to Washington with their school. I always ask them one question. I say, are we a democracy or a republic? Just to see if any of them know. And some of them do. Actually, the kids are better than the adults sometimes, but I don't think they're being taught about socialism or the horrors of socialism, and also the great blessings of capitalism. You know, we're taught to sort of hate, you know, people who've succeeded and done well in life. No, we should think that maybe our kid could do that, or that any one of us could in America. Not all of us will, but with freedom, amazing things happen. You know, the Walton family was a bunch of country bumpkins from Arkansas. But they got the idea of buying and selling stuff in these retail stores, and they made billions of dollars and created hundreds of thousands of jobs. I mean, a lot of people work in those centers and the distribution centers, but lack of education is part of it. And then we become politically correct, and so we don't want to say, oh, there's anything wrong with socialism. You heard what the president said in Cuba? He said, well, communism and capitalism are really both fine. It's just whatever works. And that the People's Revolution in Cuba was just this, you know, it's this great thing, noble thing for education and healthcare. It's like, he forgot to leave out all the people that are in prison because they criticize the government, or all the people who decided to swim from Cuba to Florida because they were trying to get away from the totalitarian regime of the Castros. But yeah, people need to know that. But I think it's because it's fuzzy notion that because it's democratic socialism that it wouldn't be that bad. But you know, our founding fathers weren't very much in favor of democracy. They wanted a democracy restricted by a document that protected certain rights. That we didn't want to make it where the majority could take away your religious freedom, or the majority could take away your right to own a gun, or the majority could say the government can come in your house anytime without a warrant. Those were things that we said were sacred rights that no majority could take away. No democracy. In the back?
I agree with everything you said about the national debt. I want to ask you a question. Has anybody ever considered you to be a running mate for Trump?
Not that I know of. Yeah, no, I think my position in the Senate is probably a more important place to have my voice, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Sam? Yes.
Got two, I guess. Larry Lamb, veterans, and Jim here with Citizens for Veterans Health Care. First question to talk about, you know, the state's gonna probably build one more state veterans home somewhere. And of course, we've been doing a lot of selling to have to bring it to Magoffin County, eastern Kentucky. Because right now, they've got three that's west of I-75, wants to get Radcliffe up and going, which it should be right before May, we know that. We've got one down in Hazard, east of I-75. And over in eastern Kentucky, there's probably 160,000 plus veterans. And I think you've got the packet and letter that we've asked if you would.
Yeah, I'll look
Help
at
us on
that and
that.
I'll see if we have any influence on the process. Do you know much about this issue, Regina?
Just a little bit, no more than Larry, I'm sure, Senator, but it's in the state's hands right now in terms of
So it's not in
getting
the
the money.
VA's hands?
No, it's right now, we've had a resolution that's passed the House, and then the other day, the Senate passed the resolution. We know it's not law binding, but to get their blessing certainly goes a long way going to
In the State House?
the State House.
Yeah, that may still not be binding. I'm guessing it's actually the VA that makes final decision.
They do, that, like I said, you asking for support going to the commissioner, and where they're gonna put it. But the economics, the way they are up here, Magoffin County's probably been one of the hardest hit counties in the state as far as economics. So it'd be a plus for our veterans and for the region as far as economics and,
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of one other thing I wanted to mention, specifically for Magoffin County and several counties here in eastern Kentucky. I think the last report I saw said 12.5% unemployment,
yep.
and that doesn't count anybody permanently out of work, so it could well be higher. So that's one of the highest in Kentucky. I have a bill called Economic Freedom Zones, and what it would do for Magoffin County is it would lower your taxes, your federal taxes, for 10 years. So we'd lower the corporate income tax to 5%, and we'd lower the personal income tax to 5%. And you say, well, you don't have that many successful businesses. Well, you've got some. They would all do better, and it adds up to millions of dollars. So instead of me sending you a grant back to Magoffin County, what if it were $20 million a year that were left in the county, or $10 million? I'm not sure what the number is, but it's a number somewhere in there that would be millions of dollars that never goes to Washington and stays locally. You can't really do that with local taxes because you got to pay for your law enforcement, your fire, and your teachers and all that. But you can with federal taxes. And most people don't realize this. Your federal taxes don't go to much of your local infrastructure. They sometimes go to highways. But I think that what you do is try to make Magoffin County a tax haven. You may not get the Toyota plant to move to Magoffin County, but what you might get is the ones that are here will thrive. Maybe a bank that's in a neighboring county says, well, heck, for 5% income tax, I'll move the bank over to Magoffin County. So maybe you get a branch of a bank that moves to town. But I think we've tried every other which way. I mean, we've tried Appalachian rural grants and all that stuff. We've tried for 50 years and it's not really working. So I think what we need to do is try to expand existing business, but then have the hope that maybe some new business would come in too. Jack Kemp used to talk about this. He called them enterprise zones. We've just made it a bigger idea. We call it economic freedom zones. It worked in North Carolina. They had Research Triangle Park, where you had Chapel Hill, Durham, and Raleigh. They just eliminated taxes for 25 years or something in that area.
I had one more. I worked with our disabled vets, homeless, incarcerated. Also a service officer for our DAV, working with claims for dependents. The one thing that's probably, I'd like to see maybe go to the VA, there's one birth defect that I think is in the VA book for dependents, and that's at spina bifida. Well, there's other things that are related to Agent Orange, like soft tissue sarcoma, I believe it's a cancer.
Right.
Well, that's an Agent Orange problem, but only a veteran that's in NUM can do a claim if a dependent. Other words, maybe the VA could expand what's covered that a dependent can file a claim for. Right now, there's only one. that's in the book. And if it's not in the book, the defendant can't file a claim.
I'll look at that. I'm not as familiar with that issue. I know some of the veterans have been coming and saying they want to expand the definition of where you had to be, whether you had to be on the land or on the ocean close by, or in a port or something. But we are looking at all of that.
Senator, I just wanted to clarify and bring you up to date on our unemployment status. Just recently came out last week. Actually, in Magoffin County, we were at either 23 or 24% unemployment, being the highest unemployment county in the state. The next one to us was about 10% below us. So that's the urgency that we're under here in this county. And I mentioned to you earlier, in the fall, we lost 110 jobs at Joy Manufacturing. That's the way it's reported, but actually, when it was actually up and running, it was nearly 250 people working there. That was a coal-producing type of parts plant that we've lost.
Well, the thing is that we've lost jobs in the coal industry, the parts industry, the machinery industry, the rail industry, everything related to it. And we really do have to decide who we want representing us. Do we want people representing us who say things like, we are going to put you out of business in the coal industry? You know, it's one thing to have reasonable regulations, like a speed limit. Reasonable regulations like you can't dump benzene in the creek. Those are all reasonable. But saying we can't have any coal industry is just not reasonable. It's been killing all of us. And it may not be the end all for Eastern Kentucky, but it's part of the solution. We need those jobs. The railway jobs, the CSX jobs were good jobs. And we're getting beaten to death, but mostly by executive order. I haven't gotten to vote on any of those regulations. On the ones I did vote for, I voted to repeal them, and then the president overrode our veto. So it's hard to overcome, someone who has an ideology that's so against a certain region. But the economic freedom zones, we don't have that many people here, Regina. Why don't we send everybody a summary of the economic freedom zones, like a one-page summary, and they can get that from Washington, and it'll tell you about this bill. And if you like the idea of it, Magoffin County is a perfect example of where it might be over 10 years, $100 million. You don't believe that much money, but really you add up all the taxes of everybody that's going to Washington and you reduce it dramatically. It also lowers the payroll tax. So if you have people who are poor in your community who only pay payroll tax and don't pay income tax, we reduce the payroll tax too for 10 years just to try to get the area to thrive again.
What's the status of that, Senator, or what the chances of getting it passed?
It's been introduced, it's co-sponsored by McConnell, and that helps because he has a lot of power as far as getting it in. I've not gotten a vote on it yet. There's a vote right now, you've heard about the water problems up in Flint, Michigan, it's been on the national news. They want to do some amendment to give them some money in Michigan, and I told them only if I get my amendment. So I can't guarantee it'll pass, but I'm going to try to get a vote. I'm holding that bill up until they give me a vote, which I think is ridiculous. They won't even give you a vote on something. Like, oh, that's controversial, we don't vote for it. Well, that's fine, I don't want to vote for yours either then. I mean, they ought to at least let us have votes on things like this. So I'm trying to get a vote on it. There is not much, we've always done it the other way. Historically, we've always said, no, we'll just bring you a grant. I'll bring you a $100,000 grant to Magoffin County, things will all be better. But that money just kind of it's gone in a year or two, and then there's no jobs. You need to have a permanent fixture to something. So you either need a new business, or you need to expand the ones that are here. But rather than me pick who to give the money to, the money needs to go to somebody who's already here and who's already selling you something that you like. So somebody's got a restaurant that's succeeding, a bank that's succeeding, some kind of equipment company or some kind of retail store that's succeeding. That's who the money goes to, because they're paying taxes. We'll reduce their taxes, and the hope is, if you have somebody here who employs 8 people, if we lower their taxes, they're either going to buy a new car, a new boat, or they're going to hire one more person, or maybe they do all 3. But that's the way you'll get more employment, is by trying to help the businesses that are here. And then the hope is that like a bank or something in a neighboring community says, we'll open a franchise. We'll open another one there because the taxes are so low. But my tax plan would leave $1 billion in Eastern Kentucky, throughout the whole region, $1 billion over 10 years. You bet.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm with the Citizens for Veterans Health Care, started it in 2011. We've helped a lot of veterans that wasn't able to get their pensions. We sent them to your office, we appreciate it. They were working very heavy. Now, our big problem is today, we got over 50,000 plus veterans in 30 counties. I've got the list, you might have a copy of it in the book again. We're traveling over 60% of the veterans in this district is traveling over 2 hours to a hospital. To Tennessee, Johnson City, Tennessee, Lexington, Kentucky, Huntington, West Virginia. Fortunately, I have to go to Huntington. I was up there the 9th, 11th, and the 22nd. I had to park and ride my wheelchair over the length of a football field. And when you get there, everything's crowded. They say we don't need another hospital. I sent your office 78,000 plus signatures. 30 county judges and fiscal courts, 50 of the 57 incorporated in this district. I haven't heard anything about it. Mr. McConnell's office got it, Bernie Sanders' office got it, Jim Miller's office got it, and Hal Rogers' office got it. I think we're getting penalized because we live in the mountains.
Have you gotten the choice card?
I've got a choice card, it does not work, sir.
Okay.
It is one of the most useless things that you ever got.
Do you,
If you don't get it approved before you go use it,
right.
then they don't pay it. How at 5 o'clock on Friday evening, if I take sick on Saturday evening, I've got to go to the hospital, how can I get it approved? Their office is closed at 5 o'clock and don't open no more than Monday, 8 o'clock.
Mine's on that choice card. When it first came out, it sounded like this is gonna be great. But when you read the wording of it, say, you know, if you're over 40 miles, you can go wherever you like to go. Well, in the wording, if it said a VA medical center, probably 50,000 of our veterans would be eligible to see local doctors. But the reading is VA facility. Well, guess what?
Right.
We got a clinic in Prestonburg. Just pretty much just wipes out.
Bonnie, how does the pre-certification work? Do they have to get pre-certified to go every visit?
Some, yes, and I know both of you have worked with Maudette and Alexander in our office, and they're aware of it, and the VA are making some changes, but of course that does take some time.
And it's the number one complaint we hear is that the local clinics mess up the rule, because the local clinic is close enough that they say then that qualifies, but it doesn't have all the care.
Right.
The other problem is sometimes there's a local family practice clinic, but you have a special urologist you need to see, and then they're not letting you see a local urologist because that family clinic is close by, but that's not exactly what you need, or a cardiologist or whatever. So yeah, we understand that. The way the bill was written, I think you're right. But there may be a way that we can help on some of the pre-certification aspect of trying to get your visit certified. Bonnie's here today, and she says she thinks that y'all talk to Bobette some. Bobette's really good. She's been doing it over 20 years. Bonnie's just been doing it 40 or 50 years since. Bonnie's been doing it several years too, so she can help as well. But that's part of what we're here for, is to hear from you what's working and what's not working. On the 40-mile thing, I'll see if there's a way legislatively we can try to fix that. And then on the pre-certification thing, I don't know if there's any way we can help, but we'll try.
Where we're getting our problem is from Friday till Monday, we've got no way to get approval. Then
Why don't we find out if there is an emergency line over the weekend?
There is.
Okay, why don't you show, maybe you can,
Yeah,
if you'll
I'll
talk
give
with
you
Bonnie
this.
when we're done, Bonnie will try to find, my guess is there may be an emergency number where somewhere, all right?
So far, we haven't got it.
All right, well, let's look and see if we can help you find that.
What I was gonna say is, when they go ahead and use it, then fee base won't pay for it, then the hospital turns and shouldn't send the fee.
Right.
I've
Yeah,
been
no,
in
we should be able to help
three
you. We need to help you to see if we can do it better. Anybody else? Maybe one more?
Actually, if no one else has got.
All right.
Uh,
It costs more than to have two questions.
But what, I guess a follow-up to my previous question, what can we do to change that? And what would you tell young people, say a fine teenage boy like this?
Right.
What advice would you give him how to succeed in life and just and to just know what to believe and what not to believe?
You know, I think there are no limits to what you can do. I mean, I really do. I do. Oh, I was going to drink coffee. No, that's not coffee.
Yeah,
It's water.
it's
All right. I really don't think there are any limits to what you can do if you work hard. And if your aptitude is in school and you get a college degree, there are no limits to what you can do. Now, sometimes there are limits geographically. I mean, if you become a biochemist, there's probably not a job here. You want to go to a bigger city. And that's kind of what happens. If you are, something, more, used to be coal, you could stay. Maybe there's farming or cattle or something close you can stay. But I don't think there are any limitations on what you can do. Let's say you're not somebody who thinks college is the answer. If you go off and become a welder or a plumber or an electrician, there are jobs everywhere if you're willing to work. I mean, I promise you, not always in your community. That's the sad thing. You sometimes do have to move to other communities. But, Bill Gates' dad was a lawyer and his mom was a teacher and became the richest man in the world because he had a great idea and he pursued it. But he also worked really hard. He was fascinated with writing code, and he started doing it when he was 13, and that's all he did. Other kids were off getting in trouble, and he was, spending 8 or 10 hours a day writing code and devising operating system for a computer. So, but we live in a time in which there really aren't limits to you if you want to work hard. And it's still true almost no matter wherever you are. If you're willing to work hard, you can succeed in life. I would say the one thing we lack, and it sounds like your parents are doing a good job, is just we lack in some areas people who have a religious backbone and know right from wrong. And if you learn that at home and you're a hard worker, do well in school, you'll do fine.
And don't fall for the lies of socialism.
There you go. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out.